Hi everyone, Dan here from KilowattAuto. So in light of the recent news about the NHTSA opening up an investigation into Tesla's Autopilot system, I thought it would be well worth our time to take a look at Autopilot today and examine its functionality on the highway, in suburban areas, and on the back road. And what I mainly want to do is really showcase the functions of the system as well as the limitations of the system. And we're going to take a look through the menu structure in the car as well to really call out how the car utilizes the different features that are included with full self-driving and how those are specified in the Tesla system here, because there has been a lot of suggestion in the media that Tesla is misleading with its labeling of autopilot and full self-driving. I think in general, the media coverage of Tesla as a whole is pretty ignorant and somewhat biased. I also have a bias, I'll be the first to admit that. I own the car, I'm a Tesla investor, and I also love the product. There's clearly a bias here for the company on my behalf to succeed. But I think because that Tesla does not market with any of the major news conglomerates, they have no marketing budget, they're not paying anyone to talk about their cars, they often are covered rather critically in the news and also covered in a way that's just ignorant of the basic facts. Tesla very clearly spells out what is included with Autopilot, what full self-driving capability means, and I'll show you that in the menu structure here so you can see. I'll pass the question off to you. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you think? Because you see all these headlines where, oh, this is going to be the end of Tesla, they're doomed. The NHTSA is going to force a recall on over 1 million Tesla vehicles. And what they don't realize or maybe fail to see is that all of these fixes can be implemented through an over-the-software update. So like that, Tesla can make any required adjustments to the Autopilot system and driver monitoring systems all over the air without having to pull a single car into a service center to be fixed. But today I want to take a good look at Autopilot on the highway, on some suburban driving, and on back roads. And there are going to be moments where I have to take over, and I want to again just highlight that that is clearly specified in Tesla's menu structure here. The driver has to be engaged when using this system because as of right now, it's still in its infancy. So there's a lot of progress that still has to be made, and people that are capable of responsibly using this software should be allowed to. So we'll go ahead and turn Autopilot on at this point. And basically, because I don't have a destination in, and this is not Navigate on Autopilot that we're currently using, it's going to just drive indefinitely, basically. And this is not a traffic light right here, so you can already see I have to make my first intervention. This light is not currently active. So we're going to proceed as normal here. I do have some traffic coming up behind me, so I am going to accelerate lightly here and then tell the car to switch lanes. So right off the bat, you can see that we had to make an intervention there. And that was kind of an edge case situation where you have a traffic light that's clearly not active yet. Now coming up here, the car is recognizing that there's a stoplight. So I am going to push down on the driver's stalk just to let it know that we can proceed here. So this car is equipped with Tesla's full self-driving. It is not the full self-driving beta though. And each time that I'm pressing down on the driver's stalk there, again, that's just letting it know that there's a green light and the car can proceed through the intersection. Now, if there was another car in front of me, it would follow that car through the intersection and I wouldn't have to interact with the car at all. But in terms of monitoring, right now I just keep my hand on the steering wheel here. I will let you know when I press on the accelerator. And then one of the more unusual habits that I've developed with using Autopilot is that anytime a car gets close behind me, which people love to do in this area is tailgate. So I'm actually covering the accelerator, which is sort of counterintuitive because we're kind of trained to always cover the brake when we're driving or using cruise control. But I cover the accelerator just in case the car decides to slow down suddenly, which phantom braking was issue with some past updates, but in this case I really haven't had that happen recently, but it's still a habit that I've developed. Anytime someone close, I do keep my foot over the accelerator just in case I need to push the car if it slows down suddenly. So that was a great example there. I didn't have to interact with the car whatsoever. You can hear the chime when the car recognizes a green light, and then it just followed the other car right through the intersection. So it looks like we're coming up on some construction here, and the car is going to shift over because the lane lines are shifting here. So it did a pretty nice job there following the lanes. And you can see there was a little bit of uncertainty with that right lane line. You'll see it kind of bounce back and forth on the screen here. And then nicely recognizing that there's a red stoplight ahead, so we're going to slow down. And I will say that that's one area where the car has gotten dramatically better is its slowing process. It used to be very jerky, but in this case it slowed down very human-like. And we had a good acceleration there and following that other car through the intersection. This is a pretty congested area during the week, so we've got a lane merging in on the right here and then several traffic lights up ahead. So it'll be good to put the car through its paces and just kind of see traffic light interaction as well as interacting with other cars on the road. The lane opens up right here, so you can see the car already shifted over a little bit. Not the greatest move, but it did bring itself back. And that is one thing that I've seen, or heard at least, that they've fixed with the beta, is that the car doesn't seem to be shifting over to span both lanes anytime you have lanes like that open up. But again, this is the public build of full self-driving, so we still have that bad habit occurring. In this case, where there's a dotted line on the right here, the car stays in its lane. If there wasn't, it may have shifted over a little bit. And the more and more you use Autopilot, you'll start to pick up on these little idiosyncrasies and really get a handle for when you need to be actively ready to take over versus where you can take more of a passive stance when using Autopilot. I would say in general, you can never really check out completely. You need to be, hand on the wheel at all times. The car needs to feel that there's a little bit of torque on the wheel. But in certain cases, especially on the highway where Autopilot has been in use for a really long time and the software is functioning at a very high level, it is possible to not have to intervene for a significant amount of time. So again, we've got a leading car at this intersection, so we should proceed through without any issues. Bit of a steep stop there. And one thing I've noticed with Autopilot is that it does rely more on the brakes than regenerative braking in some cases. So that is something that I don't know if will be adjusted down the road. But there are certain times when, especially when I commute to work where I know the route very well, that I don't have to use my brakes a single time, as long as someone doesn't stop short or some type of weird situation doesn't pop up. But in general, Autopilot will use the brakes more often than myself when I'm driving. So in this case, I am going to nudge the accelerator just because the car was slowing down a lot. There is traffic behind me. And I will say that Autopilot's driver etiquette has gotten better. However, it's not at the level that I typically drive with. So a lot of times I do have to hit the accelerator, or I am making adjustments just so other drivers around me aren't being slowed down or the car isn't acting erratically in front of them. So really slow deceleration there. We do have stopped cars up ahead, but again, just another example of how the car definitely doesn't always drive like a human would. We've got leading cars here, so we'll go through the intersection without any interventions here. So that was a pretty good example of suburban driving. I didn't have to take over at all. I did have to make some interventions in terms of applying acceleration, just to make sure that we're not holding up other drivers behind us. But in general, that's pretty par for the course in terms of Autopilot in city or town driving. So we'll switch over to the highway now, just so you can get a feel for how it performs there, and then we'll take a look at some back road driving as well. So now we're going to be using Navigate on Autopilot, which just means that I have an address or a destination set in the GPS, and the car is going to navigate me on the highway. It'll take the interchange here. It will also make lane changes automatically, and it'll take us right to the off-ramp without any intervention in theory. So we'll go ahead and see how that does here. Bit of a short ramp to merge in. We do have traffic coming up behind us. And we merged in nicely. So you can see as soon as I take the destination out of the navigation system here, it goes back to regular autopilot, and that is clear by the 2 lane lines on each side of the car here. I am going to put in a different address, and then we'll be on our way with using Navigate on Autopilot again. So now I've got a destination set in the GPS here, and Navigate on Autopilot is active. You can see that by the center, or the single blue line on the screen here. So this is really where Autopilot and Navigate on Autopilot performs at its best. If I'm on this road for a couple hundred miles, it's very unlikely that I'll have to make any interventions unless something weird happens with construction or someone stops short in front of me. But even in that case, the car is very adept at recognizing slower moving vehicles, especially identifying when it's appropriate to pass them. A little bit of confusion here with no lane lines. And interesting. Okay, so it looks like we're going to miss our exit. Not sure if it was because there's no lane lines. The car's also rapidly dropping speed. So here you can see a great example of where we're going to have to take over. I'm going to turn off autopilot and just get us back up to speed. So that was definitely a weird situation. The pavement on the road was essentially covering up the lane markings. So I'm not sure if that's why the car didn't really realize that the exit was there. It definitely started signaling like it was going to move over, but in the end it did not. And I can honestly say I haven't had that happen before, so good thing we caught that on video, and you can kind of see the current limitations in that this system still is not anywhere near close to being finished, and that there are going to be times where we have to take over. In this case, the car is telling me it wants to move away from cones, but there are none on the side of the road. There's just this sign here. So I'm going to ignore that lane change request. Now in this case, it's just telling me that it wants to change it to a faster lane. I do have a car coming up pretty quick behind us in the left lane here, so I'm not going to acknowledge that until it's clear to proceed. And now it is, so we'll move over. So we've only got about a mile until our exit, and the car is still riding in the passing lane, and up, there we go. All right, so it's giving me the notification to move over in order to follow the route. So we're going to go ahead and do that. The car will move over after I signal into the right lane. And we've got a good signal here and good execution of the lane exit here. So now we'll take this off ramp, and once we get to the end, I'll turn Navigate on Autopilot off because I am going to take over. The car's slowing down pretty good, not too erratically. There have been some times where it slows down really quickly, which is inappropriate, but in this case, we're maintaining good speed going up the ramp here. And then it's recognizing that there's a stop sign up ahead. I've kind of dropped down a little bit too slow. We're doing 22 miles an hour here. So the car didn't really know what to do with this situation where the ramp opens up here. So that's where you get all the alerts letting me know to take over. I'm going to turn off Navigate on Autopilot and our GPS here, and we're just going to put it right back into autopilot. And this road is pretty narrow and there's lots of good bends in it, so it's going to be very challenging for autopilot. So I'm going to set our speed down here a little bit because we're coming in a little bit hot. Now on back roads, autopilot or auto steer is limited to 5 miles an hour above the speed limit. So in this case, our speed limit's 25. We're traveling at 30. If I try to bump it up, it's going to give me the alert that auto steer speed restricted to 30 miles per hour. So on back roads like this, the car has a much smaller tolerance for not applying pressure to the steering wheel, whereas on the highway, it'll let you go a little bit longer without that pressure. And again, that's just another way that Tesla's monitoring driver interaction to make sure that we're paying attention to the road. And in this case, it's probably a good time to talk about that with the NHTSA investigations that are ongoing. I have a feeling that it's likely that the interior cabin camera will begin to be used to monitor that drivers are actually paying attention to the road. And this is something that's been in Tesla vehicles for a while. It's right above your center mirror here. We've got a stop sign up ahead. At this point, I am going to have to take over because it is a T intersection, so the car is not going to know what to do. I'll go ahead and let it proceed. Yeah, and it's not going to know. So not expecting the car to be able to handle those types of situations. Here we have another T intersection. In this case, I want to go to the right. The car likely would be able to proceed through, and you can see it kind of trying to route itself up the road that way, but it's saying autopilot unable to proceed, so it wants me to take over. So I'll go ahead and get us to the right here, and then reactivate autopilot as soon as we can here. So I'm gonna have to take over at that point there. Kind of lost sight of the lane lines, and this is really challenging here for the car. We've got about a 90-degree hairpin turn right here. I've also got a guy tailgating me, which is incredibly irritating, but we're just gonna set our car for the speed limit and they can deal with it. And actually we're traveling 5 miles over the speed limit. So that was a great example of where the car is definitely going to need you to be able to take over immediately. Those bends in the road were really tight, and even here as well, we're not really doing a good job keeping in the lane line, so I had to take over. So you can hear the beep when autopilot disengages because I'm applying more torque to the steering wheel than just simply monitoring the car. So we'll go ahead and reactivate autopilot at this point here. Car's coming in way too fast. Yep, so I'm gonna take over on that one. Try to reactivate as soon as we can here. You can see us, we're over the double yellow line here at this point, so I'm gonna take over. So again, you can see that clearly on back roads, the car's nowhere near ready for these type of edge case situations. And that's probably due to a multitude of factors here. Again, we've got the weird lighting, we've got the really sharp turns, low visibility. Also, this is a vision and radar-based system at this point. If it were only pure vision, would that make a difference? I'm not sure. So now that the road's open up, you can see the car's performing much better. We do have a bear to the right up ahead. We do lose visibility of the lane lines because the road is pitched down, so we'll see how the car does here. Not bad at all, we stayed perfectly in our lane. So overall, and what I was hoping to try to convey with this video is that autopilot does have good functionality in certain situations. So like on the highway, suburban driving, even high traffic situations, it does perform well. It struggles a lot on back roads, especially where you have very tight curves and where the speed is not necessarily posted, or the car is not capable of recognizing that it needs to slow down in order to be able to address certain situations. So autopilot still needs a lot of babysitting. I'm not surprised that NHTSA is investigating specific instances where the car had collisions with first responder vehicles parked on the side of the road. I don't believe that that means that autopilot is going to fail and that they're going to take it out of these cars. However, I think there will be updates coming down the road where the car is going to more heavily monitor driver interaction, especially in these very early phases still, where autopilot is not even a completed system, where we have full self-driving still out in beta. But this is going to bring us to the end of today's video. Once again, Thank you so much for the many of you that have subscribed to the channel. We've passed the 1,000 subscriber milestone, and I'm truly humbled by the many of you that continue to watch my videos and comment every week. I think we have a really good community growing here, and I'm looking forward to continuing to produce and create more helpful videos for you. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And for those of you who may be interested in ordering a Tesla, my referral code is in the description down below as well. If you use that, you'll get 1,000 free supercharging miles once you take delivery of your car. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.